Class is now in session. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he gives you tips, techniques, and strategies to grow and monetize your podcast. Live in his Facebook group, The Better Method of Daily Audience Growth for Independent Podcasters. Learn from him and his special guests as they help you become the next podcast superstar. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, podcasters of all ages, put your hands together for your host, Phil Better.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Invest in Yourself, the podcast series. I am, of course, your host with the most, the podcast mogul himself, Phil Better. And today I am excited to have my guest. My guest has been podcasting since June of last year, but only really started hardcore podcasting September of last year after working with Chris Cownden, my podcast whisperer himself, the expert whisperer. Today, we're going to be sharing tips about how passion is your excellence, how to set up systems that will support you and your motivation when your energy drops, as well as improving your public speaking and so many other amazing quality guest retrieval systems. This guy has done a lot since working with Chris Cownden, my fellow founder of the podcast launch agency. So please welcome the host of Business Breaks podcast, Mr. Dante Healy. Dante, thank you so much for being here.
Phil, it's an honor to be on your show, as always, and great to see you, brother.
It's great to see you too. We were catching up a bit before. I was telling you how I was following you on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and how your podcast episodes are always very inviting and very interesting because it's a different concept than what I have with my business podcast, and that's what I love about business podcasts. It can be any type. But Dante, since this is probably my audience's first time hearing your docile tones, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and a bit about your podcast?
Yeah, docile is probably a good word, I would say. And to be fair, that's part of why I got into podcasting, because I realized that whilst I'm technically proficient at what I do in my professional career, I've realized it doesn't always come across because the way I present myself is kind of easygoing, very laid back. And that's kind of, in spite of that, that's kind of a perception that doesn't necessarily reflect all the time where I am at. Despite the calm exterior, it could be like, a duck where the legs are paddling frantically under the water just to stay afloat. And to be fair, I think the way people see me is not the kind of reflection of what I do when they don't see me. So I realized I wanted to get better at speaking and also get practice, because really you don't develop any skill or any capability without putting in the reps. I tried Toastmasters to develop my public speaking and my presentation skills, and it got me good results to a point, in fact probably too quickly, and then I realized that there was diminishing returns because the group was quite big, so I didn't get as many speaking opportunities as I would have liked. So I thought, I need to control the process, and what better way to get an opportunity to speak more than to start my own podcast where I can control it, I can own it effectively. And it didn't matter at the time if no one listened. I just wanted to just do it for the practice.
I love it. And so you started June of last year. You started doing it, and then you realized you needed help, which is always a thing that most people need in business and in podcasting and in life. Sometimes you just need help, a therapist, a coach, an agency to help you out. How did you find Chris Cownden and the podcast launch agency? How did you find the challenge that we were running?
It was by accident. I mean, I was looking for tools to improve my productivity anyway. I was browsing on various websites. I came across AppSumo, actually looking for an AI content creator. and this was before ChatGPT. Came across AppSumo and searched for podcasting tools. And amongst the tools, there was a course, and it was actually the PDF course by Chris. And I thought, well, let's give this a try, because if anything, starting something from scratch was, for me, it was an achievement. But the feedback I was getting from the only listeners I had, which was friends and family, was sound quality is poor. There's no structure to what you talk about, because I was talking with a friend, and you really need to kind of get organized. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to start building this skill. And to be fair, when you start out, it's always going to be kind of rubbish in spite of your best efforts. So it's better to start imperfect. But I wanted to actually improve, because if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, that's insanity. So I decided to try and find some resources to level up my podcasting, come across as more professional, because if you do things half-baked, then it's just going to ruin your brand. So came across the podcast guide. It was a launch strategy which Chris created. Actually, one of the steps was join my community. So I thought, why not? It's free. Why? Well, free because you've paid for the course, and through that I met Chris in one of his group masterminds. It was funny at that time. I think for whatever reason I was the only one who turned up, and Chris was just super nice, super generous with his time and his expertise, and I ended up taking a lot of value out of it. I realized I needed to do a lot of things that I hadn't done. For one thing, who ever heard of someone starting a podcast without even a microphone? But I did it. I was just recording from my laptop. So there were things like that. And Chris just gave me some tips. Look, seriously, get a microphone, anything. But here's a list of microphones you should try out. So I gradually built up not just the equipment, but also the techniques. He gave me workflows. And to be honest, a lot of it, the way Chris structured it, and I can see his DNA in what you do. So it makes it so easy. And whilst podcasting is quite involved, it's quite challenging, the bit I really like is having conversations and also presenting and speaking my ideas. So I think, that was the journey, and it's been gradual improvements, some of it incremental, tweaking and adjusting as I go along, and continuing to experiment. So what you've seen is an evolution of that, where I've taken your foundation, Chris's foundations, and some of my own ideas, trying to bake it in to be more of myself and bring something unique to the game.
I love it. And I love how you took the foundation of the house that you're building, because I look at it like business and podcasting are exactly the same. You have to have a foundation in your business. You have to have the solid ground to work on. Same with a podcast. And then you slowly build up. So you take some from A, some from B, some C, throw in some of your own little magic, and you build your little house, and then you slowly build it up and you get the second floors and all that. So I love how you did the exact same with the podcasting. You took the foundation that Chris has and that I have and that I taught Chris and Chris taught me, because it's a working relationship. We're always learning from each other. And then you added your own spice in to create the business breaks. Now, why did you want to go with the idea that businesses break? Like that is an interesting concept to take. And what made you decide to go down that route?
Well, it was an accidental name, and a little bit of a double entendre, if I may say so, or entendre. I don't know. I don't speak French, unfortunately, but, it's basically businesses do break, but quite sadly, people break. And for me, my story was one of resilience or lack thereof. And when you're a middle manager in an organization which you're in a saturated situation, you're a pension prisoner with no way to escape. and you're just taking a whole load of unreasonable requests from your leadership, their leadership, and all the crap filters down, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a bad, shall we say, toxic environment. And you've got people below you who are unionized, people above you who have bonuses that hang on your performance, and you're stuck in the middle with no apparent way up, and more people coming up into your middle management, and you're the squeezed middle, trying to fit things by investing wasting more of your time on things that a lot of the time don't really matter. But what happened for me was that the company went through, I think it was a global initiative where there was a mental health awareness week. And we ended up doing walks, public health walks, therapy sessions, effectively, trying to make sure that people were aware of the signs when people were breaking.
Mm-hmm.
And also we had resilience workshops. So this is here's a real cost saving strategy. And it's, I can't take any credit for it because it's a HR initiative. If you've got people who are overworked, underpaid, rather than give them a pay rise, send them on a course, because you pay one person for 3 days to train 20 people, and you say, if they break, it's their fault because they've been trained. It's that sort of thing. So coming back to the idea of business breaks, what really helped was taking, as much as you were stressed, what I did was, at lunchtimes, I would go out for a walk regardless. And that was to clear my head, take stock of what I had done right, what I hadn't done right, what I could have done better, and also what I could do to try and rectify the situation. And fortunately, I met some friends who were also walking, and we would get together, have a chat, clear our heads, kind of set the world to rights, and then go back to work. And that's where business breaks came from in my mind. That's the story, albeit the way I've told it now is a bit more brutal, but that's the way it felt at the time. So I figure business breaks is kind of like, shall we say, an escape from your own struggles, your own trials, and also getting inspiration from people who have succeeded. Ideally, I like to think about career switchers, because I'm a career switcher myself. That was my success strategy from getting out of that situation. So I moved professions from finance to project management. And I guess it could be about anything, whether you're moving from being a business owner to an employee, but doing it successfully, or vice versa, going from an employee to an entrepreneur. That's kind of the themes. So really having a challenge, and then how did you overcome it?
I love that. And how did you go about finding your guests? Because you have this new podcast, right? And you relaunched it with Chris. How did you go about finding the guests after your initial foray into the podcasting world?
Well, I guess there's no one method to actually find guests. It's effectively a numbers game, and it's about getting used to being rejected or ignored. A bit like job applications, right? So
Yeah.
So whilst you're trying to establish a brand, and I don't have any, shall we say, majorly established brands. I've done blogging on my ideas, put effort into regularly posting on LinkedIn, because that's a professional website and I want to highlight my professional persona. I didn't really have what I would call a well-recognized brand or an established brand, and certainly not in podcasting. So I would reach out to guests and basically invite them onto my show via various forums. So mainly looking for them on podcasting websites where you can find guests, and you just invite them. But I also use LinkedIn. So sometimes I will reach out to people. I haven't actually tried so much in my existing contacts, but I normally try and seek out new people. And what I do is I will give them an outline. This is my podcast. I'd be very interested to I'd be very interested to have a conversation about your story. I find it fascinating. So I really let them know why you find them fascinating as well, and then inviting them to come on the show. And sometimes, to be fair, now I'm actually getting approached by a lot of people who want to be on my podcast, which is nice. So I'm not having to try as hard.
Yeah, that's a nice switch that happens when you have to actively go out getting guests when you're first getting established. Just like when you're trying to get clients for your business, getting those first, and then all of a sudden they start coming in, they start rolling in. You find the partnerships that work, and before you know it, it's like you never have to post about the podcast again, asking for guests, because you have an influx of guests. Do you have a criteria for the type of guests that you have on your show, or is it just anybody who's been in business?
It is a quite eclectic mix of topics, because I like to think of myself as someone who's, rather than what you'd call unfocused, I'd like to think of it as multidiscipline. And I think in terms of my guests, I would say it's mostly people who are, for me, interesting, who have an interesting topic or an interesting story. So I have to find something that kind of attracts me to want to reach out to them. And it's usually, I think, either something that you kind of see in your story, or something you see in them that resonates with your story, or something that you have seen in them that you would like to explore further, maybe a skill that you feel like you'd like to explore, or an experience that maybe comes across as, well, that's fascinating for me. I'd like to dig deeper into that and try and unpick it, as it were.
I like that.
But I think with Business Breaks, it's been kind of like carte blanche on topics.
I like that. And it always resonates around the business world. With your growing audience, how do you stay in contact with them? Have you started a Facebook group? Have you started a LinkedIn group maybe? Or do you have a personal website that they can go visit? Like, how do you stay in contact with your audience?
So I have an email list, and that's both a personal email list as well as one on my podcast. I have two websites, which sadly enough I've coded myself. So the podcast email list is on my website, businessbreaks.club. And through that, I do regular emails on each episode I release, and also on my personal website, which is more around my professional persona and my current career. Although I do need to do a refresh on the content, because I'm kind of becoming more digital, less finance, more IT. But yeah, that's my name, one word, DanteHealy.com. And I do a regular weekly newsletter.
I like that. I like that, how you have these two newsletters that you're doing, one for your podcast, one for your business. I want to talk about tools, because obviously as podcasters, do you have a team that you're working with, or are you the solopreneur type podcaster?
I'm a one-man army powered by AI tools.
There we go.
That's the killer, right? So I do a lot of my content from the episodes transcripts, and as you probably use yourself, Course Magic, absolute game changer. And then for podcast editing, I have two tools which get me to, from the raw draft of the video to final edit. One is Resound, which is amazing. And actually the other one is Treble, which is very similar to Descript in that it enables you to edit your podcast as if it was a Word document. And I interviewed the founder, Armel. He's really great. Met him in London a couple of months ago, and he's a very passionate product manager as well as founder. So those tools are like my core items, which are powered by AI. And then separate to that, a nice streaming platform, which is Wave Video, which I use to actually record my podcasts. And I'm starting to get more familiar with the tool. So using it more for very similar to this nice layout you have here to actually make it more branded and personalized, as well as one other tool which I am actually implementing now, which is called oh God, what is it called?
Take your time, no rush.
1 second.
Take a look at it. Yeah, I love learning about different tools. I never heard of Treble before. I'm going to definitely take a look at that because it seems like a very interesting tool to use. And always looking for something more beneficial for my sequence.
Yeah, Fluting Live. So that's the one I've actually started implementing this week. And what it does is it enables you to broadcast your videos on all your social media platforms simultaneously.
Oh.
And obviously, if you do a YouTube, you can either upload the video or you can have it as a live stream. So having it as a live stream gets it out there. And by doing that, I'm just experimenting at this stage to see if it generates more interest. And at least because it's on all the social media platforms, there's an opportunity that people who will be interested will see it. So that's one I'm experimenting with this week. I'll let you know how that goes.
I love hearing about experiments, and if it's a tool that can help other podcasters, I definitely want to hear more about it. So, love hearing a live case study from yourself, Dante. I want to know, Dante, where do you see yourself and the podcast in like 5 years?
5 years, hopefully, still publishing. Myself, I think I want to evolve as a professional and also as a person. So I think building this up as more than just a hobby. And I mean, I have been monetizing it, but maybe something that almost makes me more independent, as it were, because it's getting to the point where it's almost paying for itself, but not quite there yet. But I guess as in terms of the podcast itself, I don't want to niche down too much. I still want it to be more of a broad business conversation, but also kind of more on the cutting edge, and probably evolving into something that's more future focused rather than what are current trends. That's where I want to get the podcast. So by doing business breaks, hopefully it will be more of a glimpse into what could happen in the future. And obviously, as you say, getting higher profile guests is always a benefit, like people who will bring really interesting insights to the show.
That is very great, and I love how you mentioned that the podcast is nearly paying for itself. How did you monetize your podcast?
Various things. So at the moment, it's really through donations, and to be honest, I keep my costs low. So paying for itself isn't exactly the massive story it could be, but I think where I've got to is really GoFundMe. Buy me a coffee. So you offer paid ads, and then also doing through my email list affiliate links, and also having the affiliate links on my show. Some of the tools that I recommend, which are on my website, are actually tools that I use. So it's not stuff that I would just say, here you go, now go and make me some money. It's here you go. And this is why I use it, why it's so good.
I love that. I love how you're promoting tools that you pardon me, you actually use instead of just going, hey, this has the biggest money, let me get it from them. Um, did you find it difficult to start getting your first little coffee buyers for your podcast?
I think beginner's luck. I basically spoke to some friends who had their own businesses and just said, look, I've got this, buy me a coffee. And then they suddenly just uh, pay me. And they say, no, but don't mention me on your show. You know, it's just, we're just doing it because we like you. So it's more of that. It feels like charity donations at this stage though. But yeah, it's just mentioning that you have a show, and if you want to support the show, here's my links. And yeah, it just there's a lot of good people out there. What can I say?
There's a lot of great people out there, and I love how you've created multiple different streams for your podcast. You have the buy me a coffee, you have your email list with the affiliate links, you also have the affiliate links on your podcast and on your website. So like you have those multiple streams coming in, so that eventually as you grow and you get those more bigger guests, that stream of income can flow, since the system is already in place for you to monetize. I think that's a brilliant way of doing it.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that as I grow this, it's still for me a hobby, because yeah, I'm still looking to get better with my processes, invest in better tools, even better equipment. The recording equipment is good. I'm hoping to get a better camera, but you know, stick with what you have within your budget, and don't spend beyond your means. I mean, as an ex-accountant.
You're very good at the money part, so budgeting your money is great, being an ex-accountant. Dante, if you could give someone listening, it's a podcaster, they're listening, one piece of advice that you think it will help them, either being getting guests, improving their process, or even monetizing, whatever you would like, what kind of advice would you give to a podcaster that's listening right now?
Don't wait for perfection. Just start with what you have at the beginning. Even if it's your iPhone and your wired headset, just start talking into your phone. It's very easy to start a podcast. If you want to have guests as well, don't be intimidated. Start sooner rather than later, but have a plan. And again, you need to really make the experience as seamless as possible for them. So have a scheduling software, whatever you use, Calendly or TidyCal, whatever, and then make sure you have some sort of recording equipment. And if you can record in person, do that. It's really good. But also make sure that if you can focus, the first thing I would focus on is sound quality, because my first podcast, the first bit of negative feedback was, it doesn't really sound great, you're not that clear. So that would be the first thing. If you have money to invest at the beginning, invest in your equipment.
I love it. Some great advice. Dante, I'm going to jump off the screen here. I want you to let my audience know, and everyone listening, where they can find your podcast, how they can support your podcast. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. And yeah, the best way to find my podcast is on whichever podcast streaming platform. I broadcast everywhere, and I have a website. So if you want a more personalized experience, go on to my website, sign up for my email list. There's a pop-up that comes up when you visit. Sorry about that. But yeah, you can go on the page, give me your email if you want, and I won't spam you too much. I will aim to provide value and some unique bonuses. But also feel free to email me as well. So what I really would like is some honest feedback on my show. I'm looking to improve it all the time. And yeah, in terms of anything else, I would say just, if you do like it, please hit the like buttons and give me a review. And then ideally, if you have time, also share some direct feedback when you leave your review, as well as the score. So thank you very much.
Dante, I can't thank you enough. And to my audience listening, do go ahead and make sure you listen to Dante and leave him a 5-star review because he deserves it. He's an awesome podcaster. Dante, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Phil. It's a pleasure, brother.
To my audience, as you know, show notes down below will have all the links to Dante's podcast and to connect with Dante on the social media. I thank you very much for listening. And as a podcaster, remember to always invest in yourself.